Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for being with us today. I'm Eric Ham, and we're in Washington, D.C. And today on Firstpost America, it's day 2 of the U.S. government shutdown. Both sides are dug in, and neither the Republicans or Democrats so far are giving an inch. But could more pain to Americans' wallets stem the tide? We've got the latest on this and other stories, but first, a look at the latest headlines. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer leaves the European summit early after a car and stabbing attack outside a synagogue in Manchester kills 2 and wounds 4 people. Police say the suspect has been shot while paramedics are treating the injured. Israeli strikes target vehicle in southern Lebanon, killing 2 engineers linked to a Hezbollah-affiliated firm as border tensions continue despite the November truce. Protests erupt across France over austerity budget proposals as demonstrators rally in more than 240 locations ahead of the Prime Minister's budget announcement. In the Philippines, the death toll has risen to 72 after a magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck the central region on Tuesday night. President Marcos visits survivors as rescue and aid efforts continue. And for the first time, Formula One has declared a heat hazard at the Singapore Grand Prix, allowing drivers to wear cooling vests as temperatures rise above 31 degrees Celsius during the race. European Union leaders gathered in Copenhagen on Wednesday to discuss urgent proposals aimed at strengthening Europe's defense capabilities. EU leaders gave broad support to plans of developing drones and anti-drone technology, as well as exploring ways to use immobilized Russian assets to support Ukraine. At the summit, leaders endorsed the creation of a so-called drone wall, an EU-wide system designed to detect, track, and when necessary, neutralize drone entering European airspace. The plan will undergo further negotiations ahead of a formal summit scheduled in 3 weeks.
This project aims to counter the full spectrum of threats at our eastern borders. A core element of these will be the so-called drone wall. It is basically an anti-drone system that is able to do swift detection, interception, and of course, if necessary, neutralization. Here we draw a lot on Ukraine's expertise, of course, and therefore we must move forward rapidly together with Ukraine and NATO.
In response, the European Commission released a scoping paper outlining 4 key defense projects: a European drone wall, an Eastern Flank Watch, an air defense shield, and a defense space shield. Danish Prime Minister, who hosted the summit, said Europe needs to strengthen production of drones and anti-drone capabilities. She highlighted the importance of a network capable of detecting and neutralizing intrusions inspired by solutions already in use in Ukraine. The Prime Minister further said that Europe is in the most difficult and dangerous situation since the end of the Second World War, adding that the territory faces a hybrid war.
There is not only hybrid attacks, there is a hybrid war going on in Europe right now. It is part of rearming ourselves, because when I say rearming Europe, it means also make a more robust European society. I think we have to focus, of course, on the cyber attacks and the risk of sabotage and anti-drone capacities. And therefore it was good that we had discussions with the European Union yesterday about building a kind of a drone wall that can be used, of course, especially when it comes to hybrid war.
And European leaders also pushed for innovation in key defense areas.
Innovation, quantum, AI, healthcare, defense, green tech, on these 5 sectors which are key to deliver our common agenda, we have to innovate much more. It's all about talents. We have the talents, we train them, we want to keep them. Scale. So on these key issues, this is where we have to focus clearly our energy to reduce the barriers. Speed. And everywhere we are lagging behind China and or US in terms of legal timelines, we will lose. And finance.
The discussion comes after recent airspace violations over Poland, Estonia, Romania, and Denmark. And the European countries have also reported incursions by alleged Russian drones or jets, and some EU nations have actually recorded such intrusions to airports and air traffic. Meanwhile, Russia has denied involvement, calling the accusations unfounded. And France has also launched an investigation into a Benin flag tanker suspected of being part of Russia's shadow fleet, which may have been linked to drone flights near Denmark. 2 senior crew members have been detained, and authorities cited violations including refusal to cooperate and failure to justify the ship's nationality. Now, the drone wall has become an emergency in European countries given the reports of continuous airspace violations. And now the wall will not be a physical barrier, but rather a coordinated network of drone trackers. In fact, it might use tools like radar jammers and acoustic sensors. Kinetic systems that will be in place are likely to be in the form of automated anti-aircraft guns or nets, among other things. Artificial intelligence is expected to help distinguish real threats from decoys and coordinate countermeasures more efficiently. However, the project does face practical hurdles. Efficiency is a key concern since low-cost drones deployed in large swaths make traditional missile-based systems too expensive. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte recently noted that spending millions on missiles to destroy drones worth only thousands is unsustainable. A drone wall may thus rely more on electronic warfare defending against hostile drones by jamming their navigation satellites or communication systems. The wall would need to cover eastern borders across at least 10 countries, including Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Bulgaria, Denmark, Romania, Hungary, and Slovakia. And the cost and political coordination required make it a significant challenge. And as Europe works to turn these proposals into action, the continent is trying to balance deterrence costs and feasibility. The drone wall could one day project or protect millions, but whether it will succeed or face insurmountable obstacles remains uncertain. China's embassy in Mexico has strongly criticized the United States after a senior American diplomat urged Mexico to help cut reliance on Chinese-made semiconductors. The dispute began when Mark Johnson, the charge of affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, told the U.S.-Mexico Semiconductor Forum that Washington would not tolerate dependence on critical technologies from China and that Mexico must play a key role in reducing it. Now, in response, the Chinese embassy called his words coercive, saying they revealed Washington's mindset. It further accused the U.S. of using threats and trade barriers to impose its will, describing the approach as economic bullying. The statement warned that such moves undermine global trade and damage the interests of developing nations, including Mexico. And the sharp language comes at a time of growing trade friction. In fact, earlier this month, the Mexican government announced plans to impose tariffs of up to 50% on cars, steel, textiles, and other products from countries with no trade agreement. The policy, called Plan Mexico, has been presented by President Claudia Sheinbaum as a way to protect jobs and safeguard key industries.
We are proposing a high-level working group to discuss why this decision was made. In nearly 4 years, imports in our country increased by around 83%. Exports also increased, and that is the Mexico plan. What we want is to produce more in Mexico.
China responded by launching an investigation into Mexico's tariffs, and its Commerce Ministry said the review would last 6 months and cover goods such as cars, auto parts, and household appliances. And at the same time, it opened anti-dumping cases into Mexican exports. Mexican officials have defended the measures as legal and within World Trade Organization rules. And Mexico's economy secretary said the tariffs were sovereign decisions aimed at balancing trade rather than provoking duties and disputes.
These decisions are sovereign. They fall within World Trade Organization norms and are designed to balance trade, not to provoke confrontation.
Now the tariff plan is expected to pass in Congress where Sheinbaum's party holds a majority. And the duties would apply to around $52 billion worth of imports, representing nearly 9% of Mexico's total. In fact, Mexico has already raised duties on small e-commerce packages from Chinese platforms, Shine and Temu, setting the rate at 33.5% back in July.
We are always open to reaching an agreement, seeking what benefits Mexico in this framework where we don't reduce imports and avoid circumstances that affect the country. And we have very good relations with China. This is about strengthening our economy.
Chinese car makers have also quickly expanded into Mexico, making up nearly 1/3 of light vehicle sales last year after almost no presence a decade ago. And their rapid growth has unsettled Washington, with President Trump threatening to impose tariffs of up to 250% on Chinese cars assembled in northern Mexico for export to the United States.
Yes, production has been reduced a little due to technical stoppage, and then it affects our pocketbooks and income too much. It affects us in every way because you stop working.
Now, even though China warned that attempts to obstruct its trade would not succeed, the dispute underscores rising tensions over trade and supply chains. And now all eyes are on how Mexico, the U.S., and China will respond in the coming months, and what new economic battles might be just around the corner. A historic free movement agreement has come into effect across 4 Caribbean nations: Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And for the first time, citizens can live, work, and settle indefinitely in each other's countries without the need for visas or permits. The deal expands on earlier mobility rules, granting full rights to families, including access to education and health care. Leaders say the move will strengthen regional integration and help stem the loss of skilled workers to North America and Europe. More details on this development in our next report.
On October 1st, 2025, a historic moment unfolded in the Caribbean. 4 nations, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, officially opened their borders to each other under a landmark free movement agreement. For the first time, just like the EU nations, citizens can live, work, and settle indefinitely in each other's countries without visas or work permits. The new system is simple but far-reaching. A passport stamp or digital record at entry will now be enough to guarantee an indefinite stay. Families relocating will no longer face the uncertainty of short-term arrangements. Children can be enrolled in schools, citizens can access healthcare, and households can build futures in neighboring states once bound by bureaucratic restrictions.
We are virtually the same people. We have no historical animosities against each other, and we are very similar culturally. So, this is a breakthrough, even though it's only 4 countries. The idea is, once the 4 countries make the start and perfect this regime, that others will join.
Until now, the Caribbean community's single market has offered only partial mobility. Citizens could move freely if they were skilled professionals, entrepreneurs, or service providers, but the arrangement excluded many categories of workers and capped stays for others at 6 months. Those rules were seen as a step forward at the time, but they were considered incomplete. The new agreement replaces those limitations with full rights of residence, work, and settlement. The shift is rooted in the 2022 Enhanced Cooperation Chapter of the revised Treaty of Chagar-Ramus. That protocol gave 3 or more CARICOM members the power to deepen integration, even without unanimous approval from the wider bloc. Seizing the opportunity, leaders of Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent pushed ahead. Prime Ministers Mia Mottley, John Briceño, Roosevelt Skerrit, and Ralph Gonsalves signed on, describing the step as vital to both economic resilience and cultural unity. Officials hope the agreement will tackle one of the region's most pressing issues, the loss of skilled professionals. Doctors, teachers, and young graduates often migrate to the United States, Canada, or the United Kingdom in search of higher salaries and opportunities, leaving gaps in critical services at home. So, by allowing freer movement across participating Caribbean states, governments aim to create new opportunities within the region, making migration abroad less attractive. However, security remains a central consideration. Prime Minister Mottley has reassured citizens that border controls will not be abandoned. Each government retains the right to refuse entry to anyone deemed a security threat, and systems are being put in place to track and vet arrivals. Authorities stress that the new openness is about mobility and opportunity, not unchecked access.
All of our countries have a vested interest in cutting down on the number of our people who migrate to North America and Europe, especially since the majority of these migrants tend to be highly educated and trained young people, precisely the citizens that we need to keep at home so that they could produce and contribute to national development.
The model, meanwhile, is not entirely untested. Within the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Dominica, and St. Vincent have already experienced similar arrangements, where citizens enjoy indefinite stay, access to services and recognition of credentials without needing work permits. For Barbados and Belize, however, the new regime represents uncharted territory. Despite the concerns, the agreement is live and operating. The first passports have been stamped, and the first families are preparing to cross borders under the new regime. For many, the moment symbolizes a long-awaited fulfillment of decades of discussion about Caribbean unity. But with Jamaica and other CARICOM nations yet to commit, the story is only beginning. Borders have opened. The real question now, who will join next?
President Donald Trump posted photos on Truth Social of Trump 2028 hats placed on the Oval Office desk during a meeting with Democratic leaders to avert a government shutdown. The post came on Tuesday, just hours before Washington grappled with its first government shutdown in nearly 7 years. Democratic leaders Hakeem Jeffries, who was in the room, recounted the moment, saying that the hat simply appeared on the desk in the middle of the meeting. Jeffries said that he even turned to Vice President J.D. Vance on seeing the hats and asked whether he had a problem with it.
They just randomly appeared in the middle of the meeting on the desk. It was the strangest thing ever. I just looked at the hat, looked at J.D. Vance, who was seated to my left, and said, "Don't you have a problem with this?" And he said, "No comment." And that was the end of it.
Now, the hats have been part of President Trump's campaign merchandise for months, but their presence in the Oval Office and Trump's decision to publicize them revived rumors of a possible third-term bid. Now, this is despite the U.S. Constitution explicitly barring any president from serving more than 2 terms. Trump himself has at times laughed off the suggestion, but has also openly mused about staying longer. Meanwhile, as the political theater played out, the United States was hit by a far more immediate crisis as the shutdown came into effect. Risk suspension of some federal services and may place about 750,000 government workers on furlough without pay until Congress resolves its deadlock. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the layoffs could come in a matter of days.
Unfortunately, because the Democrats shut down the government, the president has directed his cabinet, and the Office of Management and Budget is working with agencies across the board to identify where cuts can be made, and we believe that layoffs are imminent. They are, unfortunately, a consequence of this government shutdown.
And at the heart of the standoff is a bitter clash between Republicans and Democrats. Democratic leaders refused to accept cuts to health care programs, while the Trump administration moved aggressively to escalate the fight. Republican Congress members blame the Democrats for not averting a shutdown and accuse them of holding the American people hostage. And within hours of the shutdown taking effect, the administration froze $26 billion in federal funds for Democratic-leaning states. This includes $18 billion earmarked for New York transit projects and another $8 billion for green energy programs across 16 states, such as California and Illinois.
Democrats could have worked with us in a bipartisan manner to avert this unnecessary and very harmful shutdown. But instead, they did something that is rather shocking to us. They prioritized taxpayer-funded benefits for illegal aliens over keeping the government open for American citizens. They themselves positioned that as a binary choice, and it's patently absurd.
Standing at the White House podium, Vice President J.D. Vance defended the administration's approach, warning that if the shutdown drags on, furloughs could become permanent layoffs. He insisted that essential services would continue, but admitted that the government was preparing for cuts deeper than in any previous shutdown.
Well, first of all, we haven't made any final decisions about what we're going to do with certain workers. What we're saying is that we might have to take extraordinary steps, especially the longer this goes on. We're going to have to take extraordinary measures to ensure the people's government operates, again, not perfectly, because it's not going to operate perfectly in the midst of a shutdown, but operate as well as it possibly can.
Vance also blamed the Democrats for the shutdown and claimed that they wanted to give free health care to undocumented immigrants.
What they have done instead is to shut down the government because we won't give billions of dollars to health care funding for illegal aliens. That is what has actually happened.
Democrats, however, hit back, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying that undocumented migrants cannot receive Medicaid subsidies by law. The attempts to resolve the crisis have so far gone nowhere, and a Republican bill to fund the government at current levels failed again in the Senate on Wednesday. The Senate will try again on Friday, but the bills up for consideration are the same proposals that have already failed 3 times before. And as the shutdown drags on and thousands are left in limbo, the outcome now depends on whether lawmakers can in fact find common ground or whether the shutdown becomes a prolonged chapter in America's ongoing political divide. Elon Musk has reached a milestone no one has ever achieved before. On Wednesday, the Tesla CEO touched a net worth of $500 billion. Tesla shares climbed, SpaceX value soared, and XAI added billions to the tally, moving Musk's fortune through uncharted financial territory. $500 billion is more than a number. It's a marker of influence, volatility, and high-stakes ambition. Estimates say that if the momentum continues, Musk may become the world's first trillionaire by March of 2023. Our final report brings you more.
History has been written in dollars. Elon Musk becomes the first person ever to reach a net worth of $500 billion. The world's richest person hit $500.1 billion, according to Forbes' real-time billionaire tracker. The milestone was reached on Wednesday when Musk's fortune breached the $500 billion mark before dipping slightly below that mark later in the day. Still, the line had been crossed, cementing his position at the very top of the wealth pyramid. So, how far ahead is Musk? The numbers tell the story. His net worth is almost $150 billion higher than his closest rival, Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, who stands at $350 billion. Ellison had briefly dethroned Musk last month when Oracle shares surged, but Musk has now pulled far ahead. Third on the list is Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg with a $245 billion net worth. Much of Musk's wealth is tied to Tesla. Musk holds more than 12% of the electric car maker. Tesla shares have climbed more than 20% this year. It rose nearly 4% just on Wednesday alone, adding $9.3 billion to Musk's fortune in a single day. And in the past 1 year, the stock has logged massive gains, climbing 84%. Investors have rewarded him for stepping back from politics and returning focus to Tesla. After leading Trump's Department of Government Efficiency for months, Musk announced he was scaling back his government role. The move reassured shareholders who had worried about distractions from his core companies. Tesla's board is also doubling down on Musk. It has proposed a compensation package worth $1 trillion, tying his pay to ambitious performance goals. Board chair Robin Denholm recently declared Musk was front and centre at Tesla once again. Days later, Musk himself bought Tesla shares worth $1 billion. But Tesla is only part of the Musk empire. His rocket company SpaceX is now valued at around $400 billion, with Musk's 42% stake worth $168 billion. His artificial intelligence venture, XAI Holdings, merged with X, is valued at $113 billion, with his majority stake adding another $60 billion to his tally. It is this empire, stretching from electric cars to outer space and to artificial intelligence, that has propelled him into a milestone the world has never seen. And the climb may not stop here. According to Forbes, if Musk keeps this pace, he could become the world's first trillionaire before March 2033. And so, the man who once sold flamethrowers for fun now sits on a fortune that could bankroll nations. $500 billion is a number the world has never seen. A mark that balances on the edge of possibility and spectacle. Elon Musk's fortune now moves into its own orbit, pulling headlines, markets and attention in its wake. It is a force that proves the economics of ambition can bend the rules and keep the world watching every rise, every fall and every twist along the trajectory.
From all of us here at Firstpost America, we thank you all so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for tuning in.